We're going to continue with chapter 20, the first milestone. So he's going to achieve something. A milestone is when you've achieved something. A marker point. Immediately after the lecture, Hans was assigned his two professors. Maitoso Barino, he trusted and loved, and the Stallion returned that trust in full. The mystery of what he knew and what Hans did not know was to be shared at last. Like magic, the weight of 5 years lifted. Proudly, Hans stood in the deep sawdust of the riding hall alongside his snow-white professor. He was in a state of high excitement over their first lesson together, never doubting that in a month or two at most, he and Barina would be corbeting across the arena to the complete amazement of Colonel Podhasky. So does Hans think this is going to be as difficult as it probably is going to be? No, he seems to think it's going to be kind of easy. Hans's two-legged professor was Bariatur Wittick. The man had a sharply chiseled face, a face like a coin, and he had the bluest eyes Hans had ever seen. Hans soon learned to regard them as a barometer. If they were mild blue, like a cloudless sky, all was well. But if they froze ice blue, then Hans knew something had gone wrong. Within the hour, the riding arena became a whirl of merry-go-rounds. White horses on white lunge lines were trotting around and around in a circle, each horse held on a guide rein by a riding master, and each one mounted by a young apprentice without reins or stirrup. The longed-for moment had come at last, and Hans was riding Barina, but it was not like the dream. It was a shock, a defeat. Without reins, he felt awkward and insecure as a baby. What was the matter? As a 5-year-old, he had ridden a Hoflinger bareback. Could reins make that much difference? He was tossed and bounced in the saddle like a ship on a rough sea. Barina seemed to be going 100 kilometers an hour and at any moment might buck. In desperation, Hans tried cramping himself with his knees and legs to keep from kitting into the air. Even so, the slap of his seat on the saddle resounded like the slap of waves on the hull of a ship. His muscles balked at the cramped position. He grabbed onto the pommel of his saddle, clinging for dear life. Directions came spitting at him like flak. Sit in the saddle, not on it. Sit on your 2 seat bones. Push the horse ahead with your seat. Hans blanched. He did not want to push Barina ahead. He was going fast enough. He longed to put him down to a walk, but he had no reins. The jolting trot went on, and the pelter of commands. Head up! Don't put it in like a turtle. Your legs dangle like spaghetti. Keep them steady. Heels down. Shoulders back. Hips forward. Don't collapse at the waist. Eyes ahead. And just when Hans felt that his spine might snap in two, Bariatur Wittick reeled in the lunge line, slowing Barina to a walk. The man was patience itself. Ach, Hans, he pleaded. Riding a Lipizza is like music. Music has rhythm, a beat. You must adapt your rhythm to that of Barina's. You should enjoy it, like flying on a magic carpet. What must he think, Hans, when your arms and legs flap like a bird? Now then, try again to be with Barina through your seat bones. And so Hans's first lesson was a rude awakening. How much there was to learn. But his devotion to his purpose never flagged, and the difficulties only made him more determined. At the end of 6 months, Hans was still riding without reins, without stirrups. Do not think stirrups, Bariatur Wittick cautioned. Do not admit them into your mind, ever. Hans obeyed to the letter. He did not even look at the pictures where riders sat snug and secure, their hands steady on the reins and their feet in stirrups. Was not the corbeille ridden without stirrups? For the goal ahead, he could endure the slow and painful months of learning. His progress was as changeable as the weather. Sometimes he seemed to forget everything, even such elementary rules as focusing straight ahead, eyes on a line between Barina's ears. At other times, he did everything right. One day, he and Barina seemed especially attuned. They were cantering around and around in lilting rhythm, the same number of paces each lap. Hans felt himself immortal, like some Greek god flying through the plains of Olympia. The breeze of Barina's own making washed his face, and the cadence rhythm carried him so effortlessly he wondered if people ever died of sheer happiness. What does it matter, he asked to himself, that Bariatur Wittick holds the guide reins? What does it matter if he paces Barina? It is Barina I ride, Barina skimming me around and up, down, up on coiled springs. Oh, mamma, he sighed. It wonders me if I am in a dream. Gut, sehr gut, the Bariatur beamed. I like it how you sit firm yet relaxed. Your spine is now a fine shock absorber. The rewarding words were so unexpected that Hans went tense. His arms and legs and back grew rigid as rods. Herr Wittick halted Barina in mid-stride. His eyes darkened with sudden intensity. Alas, he sighed heavily, we must now go back to first lessons. Make windmills of your arms, Hans, and whistle to relax more. Red-faced, Hans rotated his arms and began to whistle. The tune he chose burst out of him without thinking. It was the song of Ramirez, and he whistled it with all the passion of the outlaw. Oh, let her believe I have fled to freedom. Remember, that was the opera song the man sung. The stallion's ears pricked sharply. Hans could feel the hindquarters ready to crouch. For a wild instant, he hoped Burina would spring into the air 10 times. Whoa, whoa, Beriter Whittick stilled the impulse at once. Sedately, Burina fell back into a walk, head low, but his ears were still lively, as if to say, we almost played a joke on the Beriter, eh, boy? The days slid one into another, while Hans grew in wisdom and in suppleness. He learned to let gravity pull him down and down into the center of the saddle, and to let gravity take care of his legs, too, so that while they were hinged loosely to his body, they hung straight down, just behind the girth strap. Meanwhile, his hands lay motionless and relaxed on his thighs. So here, he's learning. You know, he's not sitting so great in the saddle right here. And here he's doing the windmill exercises with his arms. But here we can see that he's getting better. Nights meant work too. He and Kurt did suppling exercises in their room under the friendly direction of Herr Braun. They straddled chairs and kicked their legs out sideways to lengthen their inner thigh muscles. This is important, he explained to the boys. Le Pensionnaires, you see, are bigger barreled than other horses, so you must stretch your muscles to compensate. They exercised wrists and fingers, flexing them as if they were a Mozart playing a scale, and to develop control of their back muscles, they lay flat on the stone floor, bent their knees, and raised their seats while their shoulders remained firmly fixed on the floor. After 30 minutes of competing with each other, the boys fell laughing and exhausted into bed and slept soundly until morning. With all the rigorous training, still it was many months before Hans could sit the walk, trot, and canter to satisfy Beriter Whittick. All this time he was passenger only. When finally he was allowed to take the reins, he had almost forgotten how to hold them. Beriter Whittick had to position his hands evenly together. Even hands means even pressure on both reins, he explained. Now then, is Burina well up on the bit? Hans nodded in ecstasy. For the first time, he knew what this meant. It was almost as if his hands were warm, living bit, and there was no cool steel in Burina's mouth at all. He and Burina were in contact. He shifted forward in his saddle ever so slightly, and the response was instantaneous. On a straight line, Burina started to walk. Hans counted the strides like the beats of marching music. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. They were uniform in length. They were regular as a metronome. Hans wanted to shout for joy. Riding Burina was like thought transference. It was like blowing a whisper into the air and turning on stars. At last, he had passed the first milestone. To celebrate, Hans rushed home after stable work was done. It was warm for March, and the sun swam across the sky, melting the last pictures of snow and crocuses in the parks were a medley of color. Let's all go for a picnic, he cried as he burst into the kitchen. I'm riding with reins now. Jacques made a flying tackle and kissed Hans boisterously, first on one cheek, then the other. I'm ready, he shouted. I want to go to the Prater and ride the roller coaster and the giant wheel in the sky. But the cost, Mama and Anna exclaimed at the same breath. And who is doing your work at the Reich School, Mama asked. Kurt is feeding for me. Laughing, Hans spilled 2 silver shillings and a handful of groschen out of his pockets under the kitchen table. See, I am rich. Henry hooted. Let the Grand Cavalier pay. High time he learns the value of money. And he slapped his thigh to punctuate his remark. Mama began slicing ham and getting out the sweet and sour pickles. She sent Hans and Jacques off to the amusement park by themselves with a bulging box of lunch. And there they bought pink soda pop and ate at once so they would have nothing to carry. Then they not only rode the roller coaster and the giant wheel, but they tried their skill at the shooting gallery and paddled a rowboat on a little lake. Afterward, Hans taught Jacques how to exercise for suppleness and the strength, the way he and Kurt did every evening. As twilight fell, they returned home, tired and content. Hans's mother was busy at the stove, and when she was not looking, Hans slipped 1 shilling and the remaining groschen into her apron pocket. The supper was his favorite, Wiener Schnitzel, and for dessert, thin pancakes stuffed with strawberry jam.
Left?
What?
You still had a whole shilling left.
You did. The supper was his favorite, Wiener Schnitzel, and for dessert, thin pancakes stuffed with strawberry jam. Then, in the chill of evening, he went whistling back to his room above the stable and slept the sleep of the happy. He had a good evening.